By the spring of 1941, the German military machine had done something no army in modern history had managed. It had made conquest look easy. Think about what that means. In 18 months, the Wehrmacht had rolled across Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. 6 nations, hundreds of thousands of square miles, armies that had trained for years, that had built fortifications, that had allied support. Broken, overrun, dissolved. France, the France that had held the line for 4 years in the First World War, lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The German General Staff had a word for it. They called it Blitzkrieg, Lightning War, and by April 1941, Lightning War had a formula that had never failed. Fast armor, air superiority, encirclement, collapse. The formula worked against professional armies. It worked against prepared fortifications. It worked against nations with modern equipment and centuries of military tradition. There was nothing in the formula that accounted for what was waiting in the mountains of northern Greece. German intelligence knew the Greek army was exhausted. They had been fighting since October 1940. 6 months of brutal mountain warfare against the Italians, pushing them back across the Albanian border in one of the most humiliating reversals Italy's military had ever suffered. Greek soldiers had been fighting in snow, in mud, without adequate supplies, without air cover, against a force that outnumbered them. They had held, they had pushed back, but 6 months of that kind of fighting leaves marks on an army that no amount of courage can fully erase. German planners looked at the intelligence reports and saw exactly what they expected to see: a broken force, depleted ammunition, exhausted men, officers stretched across a front that was too wide and too long, and behind that broken force, a nation with no allies willing to commit fully, no modern armor worth mentioning, no air force capable of contesting the skies. The math, as one German staff officer wrote in his diary that week, was embarrassingly simple. He was about to learn that some equations solve differently in the mountains of Greece. To understand what happened in April 1941, you need to go back 6 months. October 28th, 1940, 3 in the morning. The Italian ambassador in Athens, Emanuele Grazzi, arrives at the home of Greek Prime Minister Ioannis Metaxas with an ultimatum. Italy demands the right to occupy strategic positions inside Greece. The ultimatum expires in 3 hours. Comply or face war. Metaxas, still in his dressing gown, reads the document. He looks up at the Italian ambassador and gives an answer that Greeks remember to this day. The answer is a single word: no. By dawn, Italy has invaded from Albania. By the end of the week, Greek forces, outnumbered, outgunned, fighting on terrain that favored neither side, have stopped the Italian advance cold. Within weeks, they have turned it around entirely. By November, Greek soldiers are not defending their own soil. They are advancing into Albanian territory, pushing the Italians backward through the same mountain passes Mussolini's army had confidently marched through just weeks before. The world watches in disbelief. A nation of 7 million people has handed one of Europe's major powers one of the most complete reversals in the history of modern warfare. Winston Churchill, watching from London, makes a statement that will be repeated for decades. He says, "Heroes fight like Greeks, but heroism has a cost." By April 1941, the Greek army has been fighting for 6 months. They have taken casualties they cannot replace. Their equipment, already outdated, is worn down to almost nothing. Their northern border, facing Bulgaria and Yugoslavia, is defended by a line of concrete fortifications built in the 1930s at enormous national expense. Greeks call it the Metaxas Line, named for the prime minister who ordered its construction. It runs through some of the most brutal terrain in Europe: gorges, mountain passes, rivers that flood in spring and freeze in winter. The engineers who designed it built the fortifications directly into the rock of the mountains themselves, underground chambers, interlocking fields of fire, tunnels connecting positions that no attacker can approach without being seen from multiple directions simultaneously. It is, by any objective measure, a formidable defensive system. German intelligence dismisses it. Their reasoning is logical. The Metaxas Line was designed to stop an attack from Bulgaria. The Wehrmacht will move through Yugoslavia as well, bypassing the line, threatening to encircle it, forcing its defenders to abandon their positions rather than be cut off. The men inside those concrete fortifications will have no choice but to withdraw. The line will be rendered irrelevant without a single major assault. That is the plan. It is a good plan. It is the kind of plan that has worked 6 times in 18 months. On April 6, 1941, Field Marshal Wilhelm List receives his final operational orders. Army Group 12 will execute Operation Marita, the invasion of Greece. List has under his command some of the finest divisions in the German order of battle: the 2nd Panzer Division, the 5th Panzer Division, the 6th Mountain Division, the SS Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. These are not second-line troops. These are the men who broke France, the men who crossed the Meuse under fire, the men who encircled entire Allied armies and watched them collapse. List looks at his maps, looks at his orders of battle, and sees nothing that should give him pause. He is 60 years old. He has seen war before. He knows how these things go. He does not know that in the next 17 days his soldiers will write letters home that their families will keep for the rest of their lives, letters describing an enemy unlike anything they have encountered anywhere in Europe, letters that describe something the German military had no word for, letters that describe fighting men who simply refused to accept that they could be beaten. April 6, 1941, 5:15 in the morning. The artillery opens up along a front that stretches for hundreds of kilometers. The sound, soldiers will later recall, is not like thunder. It is more constant than thunder, more mechanical, a continuous industrial roar that replaces the world. The Luftwaffe follows within the hour, Stukas screaming down on Greek positions, on roads, on the port of Piraeus, on Athens itself. This is the opening that has worked every time. Overwhelming force, shock, and paralysis. The psychological weight of knowing that the full power of Nazi Germany has turned its attention toward you. In the forts of the Metaxas Line, Greek soldiers hear it all. They do not move. Understand what these men are. They are soldiers of the Greek army's Eastern Macedonia forces, approximately 70,000 men spread across a front designed to be held by far more. Many of them are reservists, farmers, shopkeepers, men who came back from the Albanian front to defend their own border. Their commanding officer, Lieutenant General Konstantinos Bakopoulos, has received his orders from Athens. Hold the line for as long as possible. Buy time. Make the Germans pay for every meter. The first German units to make contact are elements of the 18th Corps under General Franz Böhmer. They move toward the frontier expecting resistance. What they find stops them cold. The Greek positions are not fighting the way the Germans expected. In France, in Poland, in Belgium, defenders subjected to this level of bombardment eventually break. The psychological pressure of continuous artillery combined with air attack, creates a cumulative collapse in unit cohesion. Men stop functioning as soldiers. They scatter, surrender, or freeze. In the Metaxas line, the Greek soldiers go into their tunnels. They wait out the bombardment in the rock itself. And when the German infantry advances, when the soldiers in field grey uniforms come up the mountain paths toward the fortifications, the Greeks come back out. The machine guns open up at ranges that give the attackers almost no cover. The positions are mutually supporting. Attacking one draws fire from three others. The terrain is so steep and broken that German armor cannot support the infantry effectively. The tanks that have rolled across the flat plains of France and Poland are useless here. This is a soldier's fight, man against man. And the men inside those concrete walls are fighting for something that changes the calculation entirely. They are fighting for Greece, Fort Rupel. This is where the story becomes something that German soldiers will talk about for the rest of their lives. Rupel sits astride the Strymon River Valley, a key passage through the mountains. The fort itself is built into a rocky ridge, its guns covering the approaches from multiple angles. The garrison inside numbers in the hundreds. Against them, the Germans commit the full weight of their assault forces. Artillery, infantry, Stukas screaming out of the sky at intervals throughout the day. The fort does not fall. Hour after hour, German units push toward the position. Hour after hour, they are driven back. The Greek garrison has no relief coming. They know this. They have no air support. They know this too. What they have is ammunition, concrete walls, and a determination that the German commanders, trying to read the battle from their command posts, cannot fully account for. One German officer, writing to his brother 3 days into the campaign, describes the situation with a frustration that borders on bewilderment. He writes, and this is documented, that he has never seen defenders fight with such contempt for their own lives. He writes that his men, veterans of the Western campaign, are asking each other, what is wrong with the Greeks? Why won't they break? Nothing is wrong with the Greeks. That is the answer, though the German officer cannot yet see it. Meanwhile, the broader operation is proceeding. German armored columns push through Yugoslavia, threatening to bypass the Metaxas line entirely. The strategic situation is deteriorating for Greece, not because the Germans have broken through the fortifications, but because the flanks are beginning to collapse under the weight of the encirclement. General Bakopoulos faces a decision no commander wants to face. Keep fighting inside fortifications that have held, while the enemy closes in from directions the fortifications were never designed to face. But even as the strategic picture darkens, the tactical reality on the ground keeps producing the same result. The Germans push. The Greeks push back. The Germans lose men they did not expect to lose, taking positions they expected to overrun in hours. The after-action reports that begin arriving at Field Marshal List's headquarters carry a consistent note that his staff officers find difficult to categorize. The word they keep using, in report after report, is fanatical. They mean it as analysis. It reads like admiration. April 9th. The 2nd Panzer Division has broken through the Rupel Pass. Not because the Greeks gave way, but because the strategic encirclement has made holding it impossible. The soldiers of the Metaxas line are ordered to cease resistance. Many of them do not immediately comply. Some continue fighting even after the orders come through. They have to be told again that the battle is over, that continuing serves no military purpose. They stop fighting only when they are certain the order is legitimate. In the ancient city of Thessaloniki, Salonika, The German forces enter on April 9th. The Greek Eastern Macedonia army surrenders. What happens next is something that German commanders had not planned for, had not anticipated, and had no protocol to address. The Greek soldiers are not broken. They are standing upright. They have not scattered. They are organized, armed, in formation. An army that has been ordered to surrender, not an army that has been destroyed. There is a difference, and every German officer present on that day can see it. German soldiers who witnessed the formal surrender later described the atmosphere as strange. One officer notes that the Greeks did not look like defeated men. Another writes home that it was the most unusual surrender I have ever seen. The men surrendering carry themselves with the dignity of soldiers who know they fought well against impossible odds and were overcome by strategic circumstances rather than by the enemy standing across from them. The German commanders take note, but the fighting is not over. In central and western Greece, the battle continues. German armored columns race south, trying to cut off the remaining Greek forces and the British expeditionary force that has been sent to support Greece. The terrain opens up somewhat. More room for armor, more room for the blitzkrieg formula to operate. German panzer units begin moving at the speed they are accustomed to. And yet, even in the retreat, even in the running battles across the Greek mainland, the German soldiers keep encountering the same phenomenon. Greek units that should, by every calculation, be breaking, don't. Rearguard actions that should last hours, last days. Positions that should be bypassed without a fight become miniature sieges. The 6th Mountain Division, under General Julius Ringel, which will go on to fight in Crete, keeps detailed records of its engagements in mainland Greece. Those records carry a tone of professional respect that is almost unprecedented in German military documentation of the campaign. The mountain troops, the Gebirgsjäger, are elite soldiers. They are trained for exactly this kind of terrain. They have fought in Norway. They have fought in the Alps. They are not easily impressed by defenders in difficult ground. The Greeks impress them. Ringel, in his personal notes from the campaign, writes that the Greek soldiers possess a quality he struggles to define precisely. A quality that goes beyond training, beyond equipment, beyond the tactical doctrine of their army. He writes that they fight as if the ground beneath their feet belongs to them in a way that no map can capture. He writes that his own men, after engagements with Greek rear guards, speak of the Greeks with a respect usually reserved for equals. In the German army of 1941, that is extraordinary. Everything in this video is documented. Real names, real dates, real words spoken by real people in extraordinary moments. That documentation exists, but without someone telling the story, it dies in an archive. Your subscription keeps that from happening. If this story deserves to be told properly, and it does, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We'll keep pulling these stories out of the places history forgot to look. April 20th, 1941. The Greek mainland is nearly overrun. The British are evacuating. The situation is militarily hopeless. General Georgios Tsolakoglou, commanding the Greek forces in Epirus and Western Macedonia, makes a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life and define his historical legacy in ways that are still debated in Greece today. He opens negotiations, not with the Italians, who have been fighting Greece since October and technically have a claim to accept the Greek surrender, with the Germans, specifically with SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich of the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler. Tsolakoglou does not consult Athens. He does not wait for orders. He makes a soldier's judgment. Further resistance will cost lives without changing outcomes. He chooses to end it. What happens in the negotiations is something that reverberates through the historical record. The Germans, led by Dietrich and subsequently ratified by Field Marshal List himself, agree to terms that have almost no precedent in the European war to that point. Greek officers will be permitted to retain their sidearms. They will keep their swords, the ceremonial weapons that mark officer status in the Greek military tradition. The men of the Greek army will be released, not sent to prisoner of war camps, but allowed to return to their homes. No mass interment. No humiliating public displays of defeat. And there is something else. The formal surrender ceremony is conducted with full military honors. Greek soldiers stand in formation. German soldiers stand in formation across from them. There is a formality to it, a recognition, structured into the ceremony itself, that what has just concluded was not a rout or a collapse. It was a military campaign conducted by soldiers against soldiers. One side won, the other fought with honor, and the side that won is making certain that fact is acknowledged. A German officer present at the ceremony later writes, "We did not feel like conquerors. We felt like survivors of something we did not fully understand." He is not alone in that feeling. May 4th, 1941. Berlin, the Reichstag. Adolf Hitler stands before the assembled German parliament to address the nation on the completed Greek campaign. This is a standard victory speech, the kind he has delivered before, after Poland, after France. The formula is familiar. The enemy is diminished. German power is celebrated. The conquest is framed as inevitable. But something different happens when Hitler reaches the Greeks. He stops, and in front of the Reichstag, in a speech that is recorded and documented in full, Hitler says something that nobody in that chamber expected to hear. He says that historical justice requires him to acknowledge that of all the enemies Germany has faced in this war, the Greeks have fought with the most courage. He says, and these words are in the record, that he has ordered the Greek soldiers to be released from captivity out of respect for their bravery. He says that he does not want such brave men to be treated as prisoners. In the context of how Nazi Germany treated the nations it conquered, those words are astonishing, not because they came from Hitler, whose praise carries its own darkness and complexity, but because they reflect something real that had filtered up through every level of the German military command, from the private soldier writing home to his family, to the company commander filing his after-action report, to the general writing his personal notes, to the field marshal ratifying an unprecedented surrender ceremony, all the way to the top. What the Greeks had done in those 17 days had been felt throughout the German chain of command, and it could not be ignored. But here is what those Reichstag words do not say. Here is the consequence that no one discusses in the history books nearly enough. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, was originally scheduled for May 15th, 1941. It launched on June 22nd, 1941, 5 weeks late. The reasons for that delay are debated by historians. The Yugoslav campaign required resources. Spring floods in the Ukrainian river valleys made the terrain difficult for armor. Logistics required adjustment. These are all real factors, documented and analyzed. But Greece is also in that calculation. Greece, and subsequently the Battle of Crete, which lasted until June 1st, consumed German forces, consumed Luftwaffe assets, consumed time and fuel and ammunition that had been allocated for Barbarossa. The 6th Mountain Division that fought in Greece and bled in Crete did not reach the Eastern Front until the campaign that was already weeks old. 5 weeks. Think about what 5 weeks means on the Eastern Front. The German advance into the Soviet Union made stunning progress through June, July, and August. But by October, the mud came. And by November, by the time the spires of Moscow were visible to German forward units, the temperature had dropped to levels that German soldiers, in their summer uniforms, could not survive in open combat. The Battle of Moscow, the moment the Blitzkrieg finally stopped, the moment the formula that had worked 6 times in 18 months encountered something it could not solve. Some military historians argue, with serious documentation behind them, that the weeks lost in Greece and Crete were the weeks that cost Germany Moscow, that the 5-week delay pushed the German timetable just far enough that winter arrived before the objective was secured, that the men in the Metaxas line, exhausted, outgunned, fighting with outdated equipment in mountain fortifications, may have been among the men most responsible for stopping Nazi Germany's conquest of Europe. They never knew it. They were already home. The men who held Fort Rupel came home to an occupied country. Greece, under Axis occupation, became one of the most brutal occupations in all of Europe. Famine in the winter of 1941 to 1942 killed tens of thousands of civilians in Athens alone. Villages were destroyed. Reprisals were conducted. A nation that had fought with everything it had was being strangled. And yet the Greeks kept fighting. The resistance that emerged from the occupation, the partisans in the mountains, the networks in the cities, the ordinary people who made extraordinary choices every day, carried forward the same spirit that the soldiers of the Metaxas line had shown in April. The German soldiers who had been there knew it. They had seen it with their own eyes. There is a letter, preserved in a German military archive, discovered and translated decades after the war, written by a soldier of the 6th Mountain Division to his family in Bavaria. He writes it sometime in late April 1941, after the Greek campaign has ended. He is trying to explain to his family what he has just been through. He writes about the mountains. He writes about the cold. He writes about the fighting. And then he writes this: "The Greeks are not our enemies. They are our teachers. They taught me what it looks like when men fight for something real." He mails the letter home. Then he is sent east, toward Russia. He does not survive the war. The Greeks he fought against, most of them do. What Germany's soldiers said after fighting the Greeks is not complicated. It is not ambiguous. It comes through in the letters, the diaries, the after-action reports, the formal dispatches, the Reichstag speech of the man at the top of the entire German command. They said, "We did not expect this." They said, "These men fought unlike anyone we have ever faced." They said, "We do not know what to call what we witnessed, but we know we must honor it." And they did. In the surrender ceremony, with swords and honors. In the prisoner releases. In the official dispatches. In the words Hitler spoke. In the Reichstag, while the world's press wrote them down. 70 kilometers of concrete fortifications. 17 days. Against the army that had broken France in 6 weeks. The Greeks held. And what happened after, in the mud of Russia, in the snow outside Moscow, in the moment the German advance finally stopped, may carry the fingerprints of those Greek soldiers more than any history book has ever properly acknowledged. The names of the men who held Fort Rupel are inscribed in stone in northern Greece today. Most people driving past that stone do not know what it marks. Most people watching this video are learning it for the first time. That is why this channel exists. If you felt the weight of this story, that's history doing what it's supposed to do. That like button honors that feeling. Don't skip it. We carry these stories carefully. Every fact verified, every name checked, every detail earned. The Italian video that brought many of you here, that same standard. This video, that same standard. If that matters to you, subscribe and help us maintain it. Where are you watching from? Drop your country below. Better yet, if you have a connection to this history, if your family has a story from occupied Greece, from the Albanian front, from the resistance, tell us. We read every comment. We take every suggestion seriously. These stories belong to the people who lived them and to the people who carry them forward. Thank you for carrying the weight of these soldiers' story forward. They bore something heavier. The least we can do is remember it.